All right. For everyone that is here watching on various different platforms, whether on Livestorm or wherever else, welcome back to, I think this is week, I think this is week 6 or week 7. I can't even remember, week 6 or week 7 of our weekly marketing series here at Hashtag Paid. To give everyone here an idea, for those that either this is your first week or you maybe came in late past couple of weeks, the goal with this is really to take a topic every week that is either related to influencer marketing or tangential to influencer marketing, and for 20 minutes talk to an expert in the space about that topic, and then allow you after those 20 minutes to come away with either an interesting insight or some inspiration or a new perspective on, it could be measurement, it could be working with creators, it could be how to run influencer campaigns, it could be topical based off of things happening in the world. And so we do this every week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Today, we're talking about something a little bit more, I would say, intricate, and maybe a little bit more of a like a Wizard of Oz type element related to influencer marketing when it comes to like media mix modeling or marketing mix modeling. And the reason I say so is because a lot of the time what media mix modeling is, and we'll get to it, but it gives you so much data, but it is it's quite a comprehensive system where you're taking all data and you're taking all this information that you have about your marketing channels and putting it into one thing, and it's almost returning another, but it feels like you don't get to look under the hood and understand really what it is. And so without further ado, the expert with me this week is Sean Billings, who is the co-founder and CEO of Outpoint. Sean is all things when it comes to media mix modeling, marketing mix modeling for the past number of years. And so, Sean, really excited that you're here today. Thank you for spending some time. And why don't you just share to the group for, let's call it 30 seconds, your background and what it is you do at Outpoint.
Yeah, for sure. Then thank you so much for having me. I love that MMM's in the spotlight. I think there's so much going on in our field right now. So super excited to chat about it. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sean. My background is very much in like data science and engineering. I've worked at a few of like the big tech companies in the past, and I've done some research in ML. And then a few years ago, me and my co-founder landed on really this idea of taking data science and making it more available for marketers. And so we landed on MMM as a space, which is kind of, as you said, Danny, like a catch all of everything that can go in, and you build this big system and you get the full picture. So we've been doing that for 2.5, almost 3 years now, right? We built Outpoint back in 2020 when everything was still locked down, crazy enough. And ever since then, we've been working with startups and D2C brands and really trying to build this process and build this system so that we can make it like an efficient process that people can tap into. And we've come a long way. And actually, we were acquired earlier this year, and we've continued to sell in and support larger and larger brands. So it's a super exciting time for us, and I think a super exciting time for the space in general. And I'm stoked to talk about it.
Amazing. Well, let's start at what's probably the obvious question, is whether it's referred to as MMM or media mix modeling. I've heard some people say marketing mix modeling. What is MMM or what is media mix modeling?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And with the name even being like in different forms, I think what MMM is, like many marketing services, it like has a different meaning and connotation depending on who you actually talk to. So, at its core, MMM, media mix modeling, it's meant to be just a general technique for marketers to measure the performance of their advertising, right? Like the simplest way of describing it is, let me give you all of my advertising as input, and you tell me how much revenue that's going to generate. And again, on top of this is like, if I change things around, like if I change my budgets around, what's going to happen? And in theory, that could encompass everything, right? I give you all these inputs, you give me the revenue I want. Okay, fine. But in practice, MMMs are actually more specific. There's certain sets of techniques you'd use. So usually they're time series models. And what that means is they generally look at changes in revenue and spend over time. And they're really focused on a certain set of inputs like spend, impressions, revenue, and then controlling factors like seasonality. And then so as a practice, yeah, you just say time series modeling, but then, one way to actually define what an MMM is to talk about what it's not. So what is it not? Well, one other type of measurement solution that exists in our space is MTA, so multi-touch attribution systems, and they're often seen as an alternative. And they also, they're a methodology to break down revenue and performance. And really the difference is, again, that these different methodologies have different focuses. So MTA is very customer centric. MMM is very like signal over time focused. So if I was an MTA, I would take a customer and, I know they spent $100 with my brand, and I'm going to go guess and, estimate the impact of the ads that they saw. And it's a great system when, all your advertising is digital, you have pixels set up and everything is very trackable. You can like see your users hopping around and clicking on ads. Because then, hey, you just have the data, right? You can tell me what ads they saw, right? So as a closed system of measurement, you'd imagine MTAs as being this perfect solution. But in practice, what happens is there's a few steps that you have to take. You have to guess and estimate the weight of the importance of each of those impressions, even if you're seeing them. And even though it seems like a closed loop, as soon as you introduce something like a TV or a retail media campaign, or if you have a physical storefront, like so many brands sell their products through retailers, obviously, you can see how the picture breaks down. And so all of a sudden you don't have a perfect picture of everything. You're not just trying to guess how to weigh impressions. You're trying to guess whether, they actually saw an ad, and you have no real signal that happened. And so as opposed to an MTA, like I think the best way of looking at an MMM and what MMM practitioners do is, look, they realize and accept that you're not going to have the complete picture of every customer touch point, and you're not going to have that for every customer. And so what you do is you focus on statistically meaningful signals based on spends and returns to start measuring what are essentially like massive multi-million-dollar marketing investments that occur over time. And you index to those statistically meaningful signals rather than kind of pray that the data is going to be there, when most cases it isn't. So, and I think that is like the best way to describe MMMs. It's actually just to say, look, perfect data on customers' behaviors isn't going to exist. So let's drive statistically significant signals that then we can use to infer the performance of advertising over time.
So I think through all that, it makes a lot of sense why it's important to what you just said, because I think a lot of data is opaque. I think a lot of our performance and understanding of marketing channels is quite opaque. We don't have the full story, as nice as it would be to have everything digitally packaged, to your point on an MTA. So it makes sense on the why is it important, but go to the customer side for a second. Think of the marketers here in the room today. What are the usual pushbacks that you get from marketers or their teams, or the objections when they say, oh, we don't want to use an MMM, or X about using an MMM to be able to measure total marketing spend, and or of course we're talking a little influence marketing as well. So what are those pushbacks? What are those objections?
Yeah, and I think this changes depending on the scale of the brand we're talking to, but both smaller brands and enterprise companies have different sort of problems or issues that they have to deal with when coming around to an MMM. So for smaller brands like startups and mid-market companies, there's usually an education piece, and it's not just, why do I need this? It's also like, how does it work? And so even though for early stage companies, I've seen the impact and the value unlocked from doing an MMM project, right? You can make a huge budget change based on the findings. You still have to go through this process of getting buy-in and investment from teams. And that can be difficult. And it's not totally unreasonable either. Like if you're a marketing team at a startup or, a mid-market public company, like it's hard to go from the processes that marketing company has been founded on to something that's more involved or, wasn't built here. And it's actually kind of unfortunate because I think comparatively MMMs, like at startups, mid-market companies, they can be delivered very effectively, and the complexity is a lot lower. So the barrier to actually deliver them is not there. It's more of just getting buy-in, doing these education processes, right? And that's actually contrasted. So on the other hand, with the enterprise larger scale teams, they've probably done MMMs before, right? If you're a huge enterprise, you might have several multi-million, multi-billion-dollar brands, and they've done MMMs for them in the past. They understand MMMs as these costly exercises that you do, where you go in, you do maybe one a year. They cost like multi-million dollars contracts, and so it's a pushback and rejection, and I think it's valid as well, right? So historically, that has been the case. These are expensive, long-running engagements historically. So the real thing is the key benefit is also the difficulty for MMMs is that they're meant to measure media plans holistically. So they're more involved, and you have to track down all of the marketing activities across stakeholders and across the actual campaigns themselves, right? And it's really easy to do that for large organizations. And, you might have run into a case where in a large org, maybe they were burned by an MMM in the past, or the org itself like only wants to prioritize for big brands. And so I think for a long time that has been the landscape where startups are more unsure, like, what is this thing? Enterprise companies like have a practice and understand it as a big unwieldy thing. I think that that's changing though. So, and for two reasons really. So with the wide availability of cloud computing and the standardization of machine learning, the quality of the MMM solutions that you can stand up, the level of automation they can have is, I think it's like an order of magnitude better than it was. And so I really see the cost of these projects coming down, the time to run them. Like if you can simply use like AWS, set up a server, have repeatable processes to collect the data you need and organize it and tag it and have anyone in the company just be able to access that rather than needing to always email and track things down, you can get way more efficient with these deliveries. If you plug into integrations with like the major digital channels or with like Amazon for revenue, for example, like the speed at which you can deliver these things is really increasing. So, at Outpoint, we learned how to build solutions that put up models every month for startups. And there's a translation of like that efficiency that we gain from just having better ML practices, building the systems, that now translates to larger enterprise engagements. And so we can start having quarterly models being delivered at like way cheaper prices. So instead of like a multi-million-dollar contract, it's like, no, we can do this modeling engagement for a brand for like 25 to 50K, which in the enterprise space is like unheard of. So to summarize all that, like there are definitely pushbacks and objectives, and like some of them are founded historically. That's kind of been the way the space has been. But with technology moving forward, as it always does, and with more MMM projects being conducted, more marketers becoming more informed about what modeling is, I think a lot of the objections are actually going to be countered over time. And certainly now MMM is more accessible in practice than it ever has been. And even though the market hasn't caught up to it yet, I think you're seeing a lot of companies come with offerings in the MMM space, and I think it's a great thing overall for just adding this, rigorous marketing measurement solution to marketers' toolkits.
Yeah, I can hear that, and it makes sense. Even if I take a look at how I thought of MMMs before, is that like, again, these are these like super complex, I don't know who uses them, I don't know what you need for them type things. Do you use it? Oh, it seems a little like intimidating to get into. Okay, step back, do something different. And so hearing that processes are better, technology is better, investment in terms of time and cost is coming down is super valuable. And I can see why you and your team have done it so well or continue to do so well in it. Let's almost push into the influencer side of this. Like, how does influencer marketing fit into an MMM for all marketers sitting here in the room today?
For sure. And so I think, and this may be counter to what people would first thing, but I think influencer marketing falls into a similar category to like TV and other disconnected media channels. And I actually mean that for not to say that's where you'll see like influencer marketing, right? You'll see it alongside Facebook ads on Instagram, or along TikTok ads on TikTok, or on YouTube, or on Twitch, or these platforms. But the idea is that you probably won't get the full attributed picture of the influencer marketing initiatives. One, because a lot of influencers are across a bunch of platforms. So, even though like if you're a direct consumer brand, you'll likely see an uptick in attributed conversions when you do influencer marketing on a given platform like Instagram, right? You'll probably see more people converting off Instagram. On top of that, like a digital channel as well, you'll probably see unattributed revenue on top of that. You won't necessarily get direct attribution for, which you see with digital campaigns as well. But like the way that these things get deployed and the way the return profile looks can actually be fundamentally different. So how we would look at it is, we will put together all of the spend for a given influencer or set of influencers on a given platform. We'll build a time series of that. And again, on the various revenue buckets, that could be your e-commerce, your retailers you're marketing with, your search behavior if you're in retailers like online platforms like with Kroger or Walmart or Amazon. We'll look at how the changes in spend in this deployment of influencer marketing has impacted the larger buckets. But as a system, it's not as consistent as if you're like just doing digital and you're just like, what your daily budgets all the time are, and you can measure specific things. You probably don't have individual creators moving the dial enough unless they're massive. So you probably group them together, look at that signal over time as like your influencer marketing on a given platform, look at how the revenue has changed in the time period, and then you would treat it similarly to how you would treat a TV campaign as measured in MMM, or out of home, or other strategies where you're not going to get the perfect picture of attribution.
Got you. Okay, so it sounds like when you take a look, just to recap, when you look at influencer marketing as it comes with measuring that channel using an MMM, it involves properties from other types of channels, and you're applying what those properties are. If it's out of home, if it's on social through a digital ad, maybe that would be something similar to like social media marketing or paid ad strategy. Oh, I might have lost you. All right, I am trying to reconnect with Sean right now. Give us a second. All right. Well, yeah, you're all good. Well, I think what I was getting to is the idea of influencer marketing as a channel, as it relates to how it's measured in an MMM, seems to be like a mix of those that are disconnected. So whether it's an out of home or like a TV ad, and maybe some social, like paid social, or social media marketing, depending if you're using that content on social media for certain ads in a programmatic way. With that being the case, let's say a marketer comes to work with you and the team, or with anyone for an MMM, and is looking at influencer marketing specifically. Like, what would a marketer or what should a marketer expect to get out of this MMM study? Like, what are the insights and what are the, I guess, types of learnings that they'll get once working with an MMM?
For sure. So I think the general outputs of MMMs are, and also apologies to everyone for cutting out there. Sorry about that. The general types of outputs you'll get are kind of return on investment, so ROI or ROAS, customer acquisition costs, which is generally actually proportional to ROI, right? You can infer that based on your LTV of your customers. And then additionally, marginal versions of these metrics, and I'll get to that in a sec, but really depending on the structure of the MMM, you should be able to get ROAS, CAC, revenue and spend estimates, and how they relate to each other for a range of different granularities. So for the business as a whole, for basically every marketing strategy. So you could roll them up to social media advertising, roll it up to your awareness campaigns or your mass media type channels. And then again, even the finer granularity, if you go to the specific channel and the specific strategies and campaign groups, like these are my Facebook brand awareness campaigns. And so for each level of granularity, you should be getting, again, return on investment, customer acquisition costs, and how that scales with the amount of investment you're making. And so what you do with these, right, is you help the marketing teams with their media planning. You can help with budget optimization, and you can do scenario analysis as well, like if I was to change my budgets around. And so I'll pause there. Like finding out marginal ROI, I think marginal ROAS is reason for that is that it helps a business understand whether they need to, crank budgets or cut budgets. And so I think just, let's say you are spending $5,000 on Facebook and you're getting 25,000 back. So you have an average ROAS of 5. If you spend $100 more dollars, right, go to 100 and you get $300 additionally on top of that 25K, on average, it looks the same. But what the MMM is able to help you uncover is like, no, I have a 3x marginal return on this new investment I'm making. You basically have a money printer for 3-to-1 return, which, depending on the margins of the business and inventory costs, et cetera, that can be super powerful. And I think as an output of MMM, being able to do that it's just extremely powerful. You can either figure out what's not working, like what's not marginally effective, or you can figure out hey, here's an opportunity. We could spend extra $5,000 a day here and print almost $1 million a year extra. So they're really useful for just the understanding the budgets and if there are opportunities to spend more. And then, I think more advanced studies can also look at the interactions between marketing activities, the impact of sales and promotions, how much more activity is being driven in store from marketing you're doing, how impressions are tied to performance. And at the end of the day, MMM projects can scale up to these large data science services offerings. And the projects are really there to help the marketing teams estimate whatever metrics the business needs or finds most helpful for them to just understand their performance.
So what I'm hearing is that I guess it's easy to look at an MMM and say, oh, you're going to get these figures back and these metrics back to understand where you should be spending your dollars. What you said there, though, I think was really interesting it's the marginal dollar that's actually the most important across channels compared to just total, the absolute spend of a channel relative to another channel. And so when I think of this, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this would be great to have every single month. I wish I could have this every 2 weeks because then I'm going to know my marginal spend across different activities, seasonality, all that good stuff. I'm guessing that's not, let's call it super available to do it every single week or every 2 months or whatever it may be. What is the cadence you would suggest for, let's call it an enterprise company that is looking to understand marketing spend across the board, but then also specifically influencer marketing?
So I think to be very specific about timing of MMM projects, from what I've seen, I think quarterly is, and like in step with your media planning, can be extremely useful. Right? I think that if you are doing it more frequently, like monthly, that can be very helpful for brands. Sometimes it's like not much changes every month, so they can be more. It can be more costly to do it at that cadence, but at the same time, you could run it more frequently and catch things as they start to go awry. So I think more frequently can be good, and depending on the business's needs, that can be good. But I'd say, quarterly deliveries of these things, which is faster than what it's traditionally been. I think there's actually a problem when you only do them every 6 months or every year and you're not getting insights regularly, and it's not like an active part in your decision-making process. I think 3 months quarterly is a good cadence. You can react relatively quickly to the insights that are coming through. You can make bigger budget decisions, and so I would say quarterly is good, and I think people can get a lot of value actually from introducing quarterly models to their mix.
Makes sense, because I think what you're saying here is, and I'm guessing the pushback that people would have is, what do you mean we can measure our own, we can measure each channel, and then we can put them together and synchronize it? But I think it sounds like what you're able to do here is give the full picture without having to go in silos and per silo and then trying to compare them at different levels. I would assume there's a level of human error as well that can come into it. And so it makes sense that on a quarterly basis, this would, one, kind of locate similar to planning with media, as you were saying, but also give you an understanding of what's to come up in the future. It's been super helpful understanding what is MMM, when to use it, how influence marketing fits in, what it is principally or like fundamentally in terms of out of home plus some social media spend or social media channels and properties. I know that the last thing I want to end off on is, you talked about, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you spoke about additional offerings that Output is coming with or speaks to that can complement an MMM, which I think can just be useful for everyone in general to understand what works. What are those one or two things or studies that you and your team take?
For sure. So I think, and this is definitely not me talking my own book. I actually don't think, MMM isn't necessarily the only kind of measurement that brands should be doing. There's a lot of additional measurement strategies that have a lot of value. And a part of it is what, like, to your last point, it's like the timing of when these things get deployed. So look back reports from vendors, holdout analysis, like A/B testing, all of these things are great supplemental analysis for individual campaigns, and they can help you react really fastly to what's going on. If you're using an MTA to measure like the online portion of your business, that can be super valuable, right? You can start to identify leading indicators. Like, I did this influencer campaign, I'm starting to see a bunch of conversions on my e-commerce store. You can kind of connect the dots that's having an impact in store as well. So these additional systems can be, very useful. Even like changes in platform, like if you're using a platform that has provided metrics to you, that can be extremely useful for acting rapidly and shifting budgets around if things are starting to work really well or work less well. So for sure, like MMM as like a broader principle, but then really it's just supplemented and helped out by more targeted individual measurements on campaigns. And if you get a strong signal from any of those studies, you can feed that into the MMM, right? You can take that and feed that into the holistic picture. So all of it helps. All of the different measurement strategies you can employ do help. And I think that people should be doing more measurement in general.
Well, I'll say this. I think what I've come away with is a couple things. One, a little bit of a better understanding of what an MMM actually is, understanding how to approach it so that it's not this scary vehicle, but it's something that is comprehensive. What I'm also hearing is that it's important to run these complementary and or these campaign by campaign studies all the time, but also run these larger studies, whether it's an MMM or something similar, on, let's call it, a quarterly basis. So you're getting the 10,000 foot view off of everything you're doing, but you're also then, with the complementary studies and the complementary measurement focus, you're able to understand what campaign did well and why did it do well, and then again have that data to feed it back, so the MMM is even stronger, is what I'm hearing. I'll say this, like in 30 minutes, really appreciate your time, really appreciate your insight. Thank you for coming on and just sharing candidly. And for everyone here, if you're interested to get in touch with Sean, where can people find you?
So reach out to me on LinkedIn. Sean Billings is my full name, currently CTO at Outpoint. We're delivering MMM projects across the board, and we're also starting to build some new products around kind of social boosting and modeling creators. So there's lots of good stuff going on in the Outpoint world, and if anyone else is in this space and wants to connect, please, reach out.
Definitely. Okay, amazing. Well, for everyone here, next week, we're always back Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Next week, we were talking to the writer of the newsletter, the social media newsletter, In Case You Missed It, or YCMY, I think is the way it's abbreviated. Her name's Leah Haberman. We're talking about all things, what does it look like to run influencer marketing in the future, and what's the big change coming up? There's one thing that she's noticed, and it's going to be a fun chat. But again, Sean, thank you for coming through. Thank you for all the insight. To everyone that stayed around, thank you for listening. And we will, as always, be back Wednesdays at 1 p.m. with more weekly marketing webinars.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take it easy.